the reason I wanted to tell the story was not because I don't think the story is the most important part of it, because I think so many women have been through something similar or worse than this. It's that I never told anybody. That's the part that really made me want to talk about it. And I know so many women who've never talked about it. Like husbands and wives who sat down and read the paper today who've talked about it for the very first time in their lives. You know how this started, right? Like this bill came up in the legislature. Andrew Weaver asked me a question about it, and I was, I happened to have been reading it, and it really struck me. I thought, well, this bill is about trying to allow women to talk about these things that have happened to them, and it's happened, like what happened to me is something that I had never, ever talked about. So, like, I thought, it's one of those things you put aside, for a long time, you never think about it, and you kind of get used to not talking about it. And I thought, if women still aren't talking about it, like this was in 1978, nothing's really changed. So that was when I decided I wanted to say something about it. And I talked to some of my staff and friends, like because it's uncomfortable. There's a reason you don't talk about these things for 35 years, right? It's because it's super uncomfortable, and you're a little bit ashamed about it. And I'm a public figure, so it's not like I'm going to be able to keep it really secret. But I talked to my friends about it, and they said, like, almost all of them had a story. Some of them really bad stories, way worse than what happened to me. Like, they'd been really hurt, and they'd never told anybody about it.
And did that give you the strength to share your own story?
Yeah. I decided that I had to stop thinking that what had happened to me was trivial, that it was something that I should be ashamed about. Because I think that when it's you, it's really easy to feel ashamed about things, and especially if you don't talk about it. And when I heard my friends talking about what had happened to them, I was asking myself, how come you're ashamed of that? Like, you didn't cause that. Mm-hmm. So I had to go back and think about why I had been ashamed about it, right? What it was. And all these years, 37 years later, women still feel that way.
So tell me what happened in 1978.
Well, the best I can remember is this. I was walking from school. So I was at Royal Oak Junior High School in Burnaby, and I was walking to a little restaurant that my brothers, who were older than me, had just as their first business just bought. I was 13. I'm walking along, and wasn't a dark place or a dark street or anything like that. And somebody just came out of the bushes and grabbed me and pulled me in. And I had no doubt that he wanted to hurt me. Like, of course, right? Why else would he? Who else pulls a 13-year-old girl into the bushes? Mm-hmm. And I got loose, and I got out of the bushes, and I ran like you would not believe. I did not stop running until I got to the restaurant. And then I stood outside the restaurant. I was just filled with relief that I hadn't been hurt, that I'd gotten away, that he didn't chase me. Because you're running, you always think that they're right behind you, right? And I got there, and he wasn't right behind me. And I caught my breath, and I went into the restaurant, and I put on my apron, and I started doing dishes.
And was it still in your head? Was it still in your mind?
Oh yeah, I was shaken up for quite a few days. And I never walked the same route again, and I was careful for a long time. But you forget about it. And I think when I really think about it, part of it is that I believed, and I think a lot of women still think this is just what women go through in our lives.
How often over the years would you think about that incident?
I've always remembered it, but it's just part of your memory, I think. It's not something that, in the last 20 years I've grieved over and had to struggle with and recover from, like many women do from really terrible sexual violence. But it's something I've never forgotten. Never.
So 37 years So why come forward now?
Because that bill, it moved me to do it. And, that when I saw the bill and, we talked about in the legislature what it meant, which was to make it feel safe for women to come out on university campus and talk about the violence that they've experienced, recognizing that women do not report sexual violence for the most part, and they don't because they don't think that it will be taken seriously, and that if it's investigated, that the person responsible will be held accountable for it. And when we talked about that women don't come forward to report sexual violence because they don't think it will be taken seriously, I know exactly how that feels. I didn't talk about it when it happened to me when I was 13, and I haven't talked about it for 37 years until now. I'm the Premier of British Columbia, and I'm not the most vulnerable woman in the province, and I have a platform to do it, and I really felt like I had a responsibility to do it. So once I decided that I wanted to support the bill, I think at that moment I also decided that I was going to be prepared to talk about it, to use this platform that I have this privilege of occupying and try and do something good out of it.
What do you say to people who doubt your motivation, who question your motivation for writing that letter?
I can't really speak to that. I don't know. I mean, some people will be cynical all the time, and that's the way they'll be. But I hope that for most people this will mean that we promote a conversation about it, and I hope that for some women it makes them comfortable talking about their experiences, even if it's not reporting it, because it was a long time ago. Just talking to people, feeling comfortable and unashamed in coming forward with their stories, because I think it's the shame that makes it possible for this to go on. It's the fact that we don't talk about it, that it feels almost normal, that it should be a secret, that you don't know how many other women it's happened to. That makes it possible for these predators to carry on.